everybody's got stuff to do for the bye week, like Derek and Kara and all those guys that normally come around here. They're going to be like doing different stuff this weekend. So it was basically just me. And then I just got off a live stream reacting to the playoff rankings, by the way, and that was pretty neat. Ole Miss is 11th, by the way. Tennessee comes out number 1. Clemson somehow ranked number 4. I just kept going off on that. It's like, why is Clemson number 4? And I think it's just reputation because, I mean, it'd be hard to get there otherwise. I believe personally. Michigan 5th. They kind of ran into the same problem that Ole Miss has, and then that is the perceived schedule. Ole Miss came in at 11th. LSU at 10th. Tulane at 17th. So roll wave there. I mean, that was pretty cool. So I was pretty fired up about that. And we just kept talking over and over again. Like there's 5 Pac-12 teams that are in the top 14 are ranked, and 4 in the top 14. There's only 3 only 3 Big Ten teams, and that's including Illinois, and who hasn't played anybody. Michigan hadn't really played anybody except Penn State. Ohio State gets credit for beating Notre Dame. And so the Big Ten's kind of optically struggling. But the surprise winner tonight was the Pac-12, honestly. Now, if you look at the SEC, Tennessee number 1, Georgia number 3, Alabama number 6, LSU number 10, Ole Miss number 11. What that tells me is if Georgia beats Tennessee, the rankings are going to flip. Tennessee will drop down to the 3rd position. Georgia will drop down if they lose to Tennessee to the 6th position. Alabama will go up if they beat LSU. LSU will drop down. That'll set up the game between a number 4 Alabama and a number 9 Ole Miss next week. And if Ole Miss wins that game, there's the big jump. And you have 3 games left where you can play yourself into the playoff. Now, not saying Ole Miss will or is good enough or anything. I'm just saying the option is there. People hear me say that and they assume that I'm just overly being homeristic. But no, that opportunity is there. For instance, there's not many teams like Auburn doesn't have that opportunity. They can't play their own in the playoffs. Texas A&M doesn't have that opportunity. South Carolina, Florida does not have that opportunity. But that opportunity is there. That is a possibility on the board for Ole Miss at the moment. So that is one thing that I am looking forward to in this playoff things, and that is that everything is ahead for Ole Miss. Everything is available that you wanted Ole Miss to be able to do. On November 12th, starting then, it is exactly where you wanted at the beginning of the season. When everybody did the wins and losses thing at the beginning of the season, and they were trying to figure out a way to get Ole Miss to Atlanta, everything came to this Alabama game being a Seminole game to where everything is going to be decided there. And that is exactly what you got. You've got the CBS game of the week. You've got a hard sellout. You've got the potential of game day coming there. You've got the potential of everything in the SEC West being on the line. You got the potential with the early game being on CBS of LSU and Arkansas. If Arkansas were to win that game, it could be a situation where Ole Miss only needs to win one of their last 2. It could be a perfect Saturday for Ole Miss. Now, Alabama is going to be so hard. They're the most talented team that Ole Miss has faced by far. But it's always the most talented team that Ole Miss has faced. Every season, it's the most talented team that Ole Miss faces. The difference is this year, they're not as talented as they were like in 2020 and 2019. The difference is that this Ole Miss team is more talented than past Ole Miss teams was. So that gap has shrunk a little bit. Now, is this going to make it any easier? Probably not. It's still going to be a war. But I think it raises the probability a bit. I'm just saying that. So everybody get there, yell, go crazy. Ole Miss wins that game. Everything's in front of them. Everything is in front of them. So Anybody have any thoughts on the playoff rankings? Okay. We are probably going to bail pretty quick. So this is a pretty sparsely thing. I was telling everybody that like Kara and Derek and Tom and all that are doing bi-week stuff. They scheduled it for this week, so they weren't able to do the space. So I just wanted to come hang out because I enjoy doing these things, and I'm pretty excited. Also, I talked on the the live stream tonight about the playoff reaction, about how LSU probably got the benefit of Ole Miss not having Zach Evans and 2 or 3 players hurt on defense, and nobody really takes that into account in the fourth quarter. It's kind of a weird thing, but LSU won the game. Now let's see if LSU can string together another win against Alabama and get it done. If they can't, that sets up an all-world game in Oxford, November 12th. Should be absolutely massive. I'm expecting 68,000 people in that stadium, standing room only. Should be a lot of fun. But Alabama comes to town. This is not the Alabama that came in 2020. It's not the Alabama that existed in 2018. This is a flawed Alabama team. Still uber talented, but flawed. So they've come down to earth just a little bit. Ole Miss has risen just a little bit to make that probability of an upset more attainable. That's all I'm saying there. So anyway, we're gonna stop doing this space and everything. Hope everybody has a good day. But we will see you next week in the space. Should be a lot of fun. Stuart, we're gonna let's see, just a second. I'm gonna see something here. We're just hanging out. Let's see. I sent an invite for you to speak, Stuart. Let's see. Let's see. I'll invite Hunter to speak too, because that is important. Now people are starting to show up a little bit. So I was talking about the Ole Miss and Alabama game, and how you
I'm
doing,
doing
Stuart?
good, buddy. I guess we need to get ready to be War Eagle fans since Lane's going over there any day now, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. By the way, I did a video of the press conference Monday, and the whole thing I just prayed up and down that Lane would say something about Brian Harsin and Auburn, and he did. And I was like, okay, I can just put that in my YouTube title. 17,000 views in 24 hours.
I thought what he said was really gracious and very
Mm,
human, and
mm,
um, you can tell that this is a guy that has been through it. Um,
yeah.
I mean, I particularly, talking about how it affects people. Don't worry about the head coach, all the other families involved, and how disruptive it is for them. So, what's your prediction on who they're going to end up with?
Honestly, I'm thinking Hugh Freeze or Dion.
Mm-hmm. And which one would you pick?
If I was Auburn, I would take Dion
Yeah,
because they need Atlanta really bad, and he is Mr. Atlanta. But Hugh Freeze will probably be the guy that fits with the boosters culture.
right.
Just my opinion there. But it should be quite interesting. I was telling everybody before you guys came on, right before this, I had a live stream reacting to the playoff rankings. For those that don't know, Ole Miss came in at number 11. Tennessee came in at number 1, and Georgia at number 3. Somehow Clemson made it into the top 4. Bama's at number 6. LSU is at number 10. Like I said, Ole Miss at number 11. Um, but it's kind of set up an interesting situation to where it's almost like they've manipulated the rankings. It's interesting.
Well, am I wrong? If they just win, the rankings don't mean anything if Ole Miss just wins out, right?
Well, if Ole Miss wins out, it's set up to the point where there's no way Ole Miss can't. If Ole Miss beats Alabama, they're going to end up at like 5th or 6th in the next rankings.
Yeah, I guess it has to be Bama has to beat LSU.
Yes, that's the important thing.
Yeah, God help us. We have to have to root for Bama. Um,
Before the Ole Miss Bama game, LSU plays in Fayetteville. So there's a chance if Arkansas could win that game, that Ole Miss could beat Alabama and only have to win one of their last two games to win the West.
I saw that. I saw that you were right, and that I hadn't thought about that, but that makes a lot
Mm.
of sense. That's a really good point.
Yeah,
And I hate that game in Fayetteville, so I'm glad it's not a must win.
yeah. I hope everything falls in the line because I told people it's like if Ole Miss goes 3-1, I would automatically assume the loss was to Arkansas and Fayetteville, then Alabama.
Wow.
Just because that
I
that game
can't.
is
It just. I mean, I
so.
know you can't look backwards, but just one bad quarter against LSU.
Mhm.
That's it. I mean,
Without
wow.
Zach Evans, and we all saw what Zach Evans means to this
Yeah,
team.
yeah.
Mm.
And AJ Finley being out didn't help.
Yeah, Troy
Uh,
Brown got injured.
and
Him
Brown,
being
yeah,
out didn't help. Cedric Johnson's not near 100%. So
right.
yeah, it was almost like that LSU game was that the equivalent of the Auburn game last year.
Yeah, which I just hated. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That Auburn game and the Bo Wallace LSU game still haunt me.
Yeah, Tiger Stadium. I told people all the time that we need to quit saying we play well at Tiger Stadium because we haven't played well in Tiger Stadium in a while.
It's so true, man.
Uh,
I was there as I'm old enough to have been there as a very young kid with my dad when Billy Cannon ran it back.
really,
Yep.
very young. How old?
I was like 6, I
Okay,
guess.
so
Uh,
you're just old enough to remember that on your own and not somebody
well,
tell you
what I
you were
remember is how scary it was on Halloween because people were in costumes,
there.
and I was more freaked out about that than the fact that Ole Miss just lost this game. But it's a special, weird, strange um, Bermuda Triangle of football.
Yeah, it's weird. And I told people leading up to that game all week is like LSU likes to beat an elite Ole Miss team. I
Right.
mean, they did that to Vault back in the days when Ole Miss was in their glory period. Like LSU beat them like 4 out of 5 or something like that.
Well,
And
how great is it though that we're at a point now where LSU rushes the field when they beat us?
yes,
That
that's twice in a decade.
I mean, I'll take that. I
Yeah,
mean, I'd rather win, but if losing is that exceptional, that's a pretty damn good place to be.
yeah, pretty cool. Like I said, I just can't believe in these first playoff rankings they put Clemson for. I can't get over that.
Yeah,
Because they benched their
but
quarterback last
why
year.
is that? You know a lot about this stuff. Why is that?
I think it has to do with the fact that they were worried about the optics of going 2-2 with SEC and Big Ten, or
Right,
3-1 SEC and Big Ten.
right.
So they just threw somebody else in there, and the best record and the one that would cause the least amount of consternation was Clemson. I mean,
Yeah.
they're 8-0. But Clemson, I don't think Clemson would beat Michigan. I don't think Clemson would beat Alabama. Heck, I don't know if Clemson would beat Oregon. And I mean, honestly, Clemson's probably they should have an 8 or a 9 next to their name if we're being real.
So if Ole Miss played Clemson this Saturday, who would win?
I think Ole Miss would beat them fairly easily.
Yeah.
And I mean, Clemson's made plays, and every now and then they do something, but every now and then they just look awful, just
So have you?
awful.
I missed the show today, but have you picked on Tennessee, Georgia?
Not yet. I am. My pick will be tomorrow on SEC After Dark, and then I'll carry that over into
Oh,
the other shows. So I haven't even thought of that, but I'm the Tennessee Georgia game. The thing that everybody needs to remember on that one is if Georgia is trying to play catch up with Tennessee, which is what Tennessee wants, Tennessee's probably going to win the game. If Tennessee is trying to have to rush and react to what Georgia's doing offensively, Georgia's going to win the game. Tennessee so much needs to dictate tempo that it's just everything with their program right now.
yeah. I still can't get over going to that. Ole Miss Georgia game, I guess 2016 when Ole Miss beat them easily on the
Yeah, like 45-14 or
like
something
the
like that.
hottest day of the year. Yeah, and it was like I got to hand it to Kirby Smart, man. That's a hell of a turnaround.
Yeah.
I mean, that's impressive. Those Georgia fans, I remember seeing them in the Grove. They felt this is like never going to come back. You know, we're in this cul-de-sac here. You
Mm-hmm.
guys rise. But they turned it around, man. Right? You know, got to respect that.
And I will go. We got 5 people in this room. I will say this: I do not think that anybody needs to worry about Lane Kiffin going to Auburn.
I don't see why,
Yeah.
in a human level,
Yeah.
anybody would want to do that. I I guess there's the where you're going to win a national championship and where you're going to get the most booster support and all of that. But if we can rally around the Grove and come up with enough to keep,
Well,
um,
if you look at the 12-team playoff that's going to happen in 2 or 3 years, all of a sudden, if you look at where Ole Miss is finished, Ole Miss is already finished in that tournament
that's a
multiple times.
nobody's talking about this, Stephen. You should talk about that more. Man.
Yeah,
Nobody's at that point. Yeah.
that's a big thing. In 2008, yes, Auburn was a superior program to Ole Miss. And if you look at booster support and things like that, they probably had the ability to have a higher ceiling than Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't say that they're a better program because they won championships. You can't say they're a better program because of what they did 10 years ago. You can't say any of that because everything changed. And Ole Miss has already put itself in a position to where they would be playing for the national title in 2 out of the last 3 years. So your argument that it can't be done at Ole Miss, which is a big argument for schools that are trying to come in and poach a coach,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
he's saying that it can't be done, that's not going to hold much water because everything has changed. And the failure for people to realize that it's changed, I think, is a little bit of a fatal flaw.
Yeah.
And there,
No, that's a really good point, man. Hey,
yeah,
so riddle me this: if you're Lane Kiffin and your ultimate goal is to follow Saban, are you better positioned to do that coming out of Ole Miss or Auburn?
oh yeah, you're not. If you take that Auburn job, Alabama goes out the window because
I
Alabama will
like
not hire an Auburn coach.
I can't imagine that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. So in a
that'd be
life,
like Ole Miss hiring Dan Mullen.
yeah, yeah. I mean, how many more years does Saban have in him? You think
Probably 2 or 3,
2 or
not
3?
many.
Yeah. So I mean, Lane's got a nice life there. He seems to really like it. He
And I told people Ole Miss can go to $10 million.
mm-hmm.
They chose not to last year strategically. They could have just gave him the whole thing because they knew that this was going to keep coming up. So they're going to try and sign him for $8.5 million next year, and the year after that 9.5. But they can go to like 10, 10.5. So anybody that is going to try to hire Lane Kiffin away is probably going to take $11 million a year.
Yeah,
And honestly, a Jimbo like contract.
right. I don't know. I mean, quality of life. What's another $1 million in
Yeah,
Auburn?
there's an underrated part about him at Ole Miss, and that is he basically lives in Oxford 8 months out of the year.
Yep.
4 months is in Boca Raton, Florida. There is not many jobs in this world that would allow the head football coach to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that there's some people that need to remember that. That's a big deal to be able to jet set down there and have this paradise like a state that he can go to. That's like Mike Leach going down to Key West. There's not many schools where you can do this. And Auburn is a place that you absolutely can't do this because if Lane Kiffin loses one game,
Yeah.
all of a sudden that becomes the seminal issue that he needs to give up, and the boosters start meddling again.
Who wants to live in that snake pit? I mean,
Yeah,
I can't. I wouldn't. I sure couldn't.
yeah. And
All
I
right,
think
brother.
people that are in it, they just don't know any better.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
they can't imagine another world. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
All right, buddy.
all right. Thanks, Bob.
Be a great week. Hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy. Anybody else have any thoughts? Just raise your hand. I'll let you speak. We're just hanging out. All right. Well, if it looks like nobody, I hope everybody has a good time and comes back next week when we're talking about the biggest football game in Ole Miss in 20 years. Ole Miss and Alabama, November 12th. It's going to be absolutely huge. Tune in for that. Follow it on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We'll have our space next week at 8 o'clock. Next week at 7, I'll have my live stream that I'll probably be on about the college playoff rankings and a part of Locked On SEC. So tune into that as well. So I hope everybody has a good time. If you have any questions, shoot me a tweet. I'm more than happy to facilitate. And if it's a good enough question, I'll probably figure out a way to get it on one of my shows. So anyway, thank you guys, and I will talk to you later. Take care.